Before humans figured out how to make steel, before we even had the Bronze Age, there was copper. And it might be the one metal that quietly built more of human civilization than any other. This is the real history of copper mining, from the first person who ever dug it out of the ground, to the modern industry that's now racing to control it all over again. Let's start around 10,000 years ago. Early humans had already been using stone tools for a very long time. But somewhere in the Middle East, likely in modern-day Turkey, someone noticed a strange reddish rock that could be hammered into shape without shattering like stone did. That rock was native copper, and it was one of the first metals humans ever worked with their hands. For a while, copper was rare and mostly ceremonial, jewelry, ornaments, small tools. But everything changed once people figured out you could melt it. Smelting copper required serious heat, serious skill, and a real understanding of ore. And once ancient civilizations cracked that code, they entered what we now call the Copper Age. Then someone made an even bigger discovery. Mix copper with tin, and you get bronze, harder, stronger, and far more useful for weapons and tools. This single discovery is literally why an entire era of human history is named the Bronze Age. But here's the thing people forget. Bronze doesn't exist without copper. Copper was the foundation the entire age was built on. Ancient Egypt mined copper in the Sinai Peninsula for thousands of years, using it for tools, weapons, and eventually the everyday hardware of an empire. The island of Cyprus became so famous for its copper deposits that its name likely gave copper its very element. The word copper traces back to Cyprium, meaning metal of Cyprus. The Romans took copper mining to an industrial scale nobody had attempted before. In places like Rio Tinto, Spain, Roman engineers built massive mining operations, complete with water-powered drainage systems to pump water out of deep shafts. Thousands of slaves and laborers worked these mines under brutal conditions, and some of those Roman mine shafts are so extensive that modern engineers still study how they managed it with such primitive tools. Copper coins fueled Roman trade across 3 continents, and copper alloys like bronze and brass equipped Roman legions from Britain to North Africa. Copper mining also flourished independently in other parts of the ancient world, largely unconnected to Europe. In the American Southwest and around the Great Lakes region, indigenous peoples were mining native copper for tools and ceremonial objects thousands of years before any European ship reached the continent. In China, copper and bronze casting reached extraordinary sophistication, producing ceremonial vessels so advanced that some techniques used in ancient Chinese bronze foundries weren't fully understood by modern metallurgists until relatively recently. For over 1,000 years after Rome fell, large-scale copper mining slowed to a crawl across much of Europe. Small local operations persisted, miners working shallow deposits with hand tools, much like their ancestors had for centuries, but nothing approached the industrial scale Rome had reached. Copper mining survived mainly through isolated regional centers in Central Europe and Scandinavia, quietly supplying local demand until a very different kind of revolution came along. Fast forward to the 1800s. This is where copper's story completely changes direction because of 2 words, electricity and communication. When Samuel Morse built the telegraph, and later when Alexander Graham Bell built the telephone, both needed one thing above almost everything else: copper wire, and lots of it. Copper conducts electricity better than almost any affordable metal on Earth. Then Thomas Edison invented the practical light bulb, and cities everywhere needed to be wired for power. Suddenly, copper wasn't just useful. It was essential infrastructure for the modern world. Demand exploded almost overnight, and mining companies raced to find it. In the United States, copper booms transformed entire regions. Michigan's Upper Peninsula had one of the earliest major copper rushes in the country, with pure native copper nuggets pulled straight from the ground, some of the purest copper deposits ever discovered anywhere on Earth. Then came Arizona, with massive open-pit copper mines that are still running today, some of them among the largest man-made excavations on the planet. And Montana became famous for producing roughly 1/3 of all copper used in the entire United States at its peak, powering the wiring of American cities from coast to coast. Copper mining wasn't just an industry, it reshaped the American West. Boomtowns sprang up almost overnight around major copper deposits, filled with immigrant laborers from Ireland, Italy, Mexico, and Eastern Europe, all drawn by mining jobs and the promise of steady wages. Railroads were built specifically to move copper ore from remote mining districts to smelters and ports. Entire local economies depended entirely on whether the copper vein underground was still profitable to dig, and when a mine played out, whole towns could empty within a few short years, leaving behind what people later called ghost towns scattered across Arizona, Montana, and Nevada. And copper's importance didn't stop with electricity and telephones. When World War I and World War II broke out, copper became a strategic military resource. Shell casings, telegraph wire, radio equipment, and ammunition all required copper in enormous quantities. Rationed civilian copper used just to keep war production running. For a brief period, giving up your copper pots and pennies for recycling was framed as a patriotic duty. After the wars, copper's importance never really faded, it just changed shape. Modern homes are wired with copper. Cars use copper wiring throughout their electrical systems. Plumbing, electronics, motors, generators, nearly everything that carries an electrical current somewhere relies on copper to do it efficiently. But here's where the story gets interesting again, because right now, in the 21st century, we're in the middle of another copper boom, and most people don't even realize it's happening. Electric vehicles use roughly 3 to 4 times more copper than a traditional gasoline car because of their batteries, motors, and charging systems. Solar panels, wind turbines, and renewable energy infrastructure all require massive amounts of copper wiring to function. As countries push toward electrification and clean energy, global demand for copper is projected to rise dramatically over the next few decades. This has triggered a new kind of global competition. Countries and corporations are racing to secure copper mines in places like Chile, Peru, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and yes, right here in the United States, where old mining regions are being reconsidered for new extraction. Chile alone produces roughly a quarter of the world's copper supply, which means a single country's mining policy can move global prices overnight. China, meanwhile, has spent years buying up copper mining rights and processing capacity across Africa and South America, positioning itself to control a huge share of the refined copper the rest of the world depends on. Some economists are even calling copper the new oil, a resource so critical to future technology that controlling its supply chain has become a genuine matter of national economic strategy, with governments now treating copper access almost like an energy security issue rather than just another commodity. And that creates real tension. Mining copper at the scale the modern world needs comes with serious environmental costs, massive open pits, water contamination, and communities living next to mines that will operate for generations. The same questions that existed 100 years ago in mining boomtowns are resurfacing today, just with higher stakes and bigger machines. So when you really step back and look at it, copper isn't just a metal we dig out of the ground. It quietly shaped the earliest tools humans ever made, gave an entire age of history its name, wired the modern world for electricity, won wars, and now sits at the center of the race toward clean energy. Every time you flip a light switch, charge your phone, or see an electric car drive by, there's a good chance copper mined from the ground somewhere is making that possible. It's one of the few materials that's been essential to human civilization for 10,000 years, and if current trends hold, it's about to matter more than ever before. If you found this history interesting, subscribe for more deep dives into the materials and industries that quietly shape human history, and let me know in the comments what you want covered next.